Hello everybody, welcome back to Supposedly Fun. I am Greg, here today because it is the day that the long list for the National Book Award has been revealed for fiction. They have been teasing out the other ones throughout the week. I actually was not familiar with pretty much any of the nonfiction ones, but so I didn't seem like it would make sense to do a video about that. So I did want to do fiction though, for sure. And quickly looking at the long list, of the 10 books, I have read 2 and I'm working on a third. So I'm actually a little bit ahead of the game when it came to like the Booker Prize. And by the way, I apologize, there's a weird Jesus effect happening. It's just the way the light is coming through the window. But if we're lucky, I haven't seen any turkeys, so hopefully there will not be any growling or barking like yesterday. So let's see how we can do. So there are a couple of books on this long list that I didn't even know about, and there are some that I'm familiar with but don't really know what they're about. So let's go on a voyage of discovery. First is Black Leopard, Red Wolf. I'm sorry, I'm going to be looking at my laptop. I have it hanging out right here for reference. So Black Leopard, Red Wolf, which is the first of a trilogy, I believe. Yes, a trilogy by Marlon James, who previously won the Booker Prize for his book, A Brief History of 7 Killings, which is on my TBR and I really want to get to. I'm not as convinced that I want to read this one. There's a chance that I might have been lured into reading it leading up to its release and even on its release, but from things that I've heard on BookTube and in other reviews since it was released, I'm not entirely sure I would be interested in reading it. And basically the response doesn't seem like it was all that great. So unless the rest of the series really picks up, I'm probably not going to do it. So it is the first installment of a trilogy from Man Booker Prize winner Marlon James, incorporating African mythology in an epic story about a lost boy and a cast of fantastical characters searching for the truth. I don't really do a lot of fantasy. I have no judgment against it. I'm not opposed to it. I just don't do a whole lot of it. So it probably would have been a tough sell for me in the first place. Really, the thing that caught my attention was just the fact that it's Marlon James writing it. I do think it's interesting, this idea of taking African mythology and fusing it into that typical fantasy format. The next nominee is The Need, which is one of the ones I had not heard of. It's a genre-bending thriller and the 5th book by Helen Phillips. A paleobotanist makes impossible discoveries, is confronted by a disturbing intruder in her home, and begins to question the very foundations of reality and motherhood. Motherhood was a bit of a left turn there. It sounded like a thriller and then it gets into motherhood, so that's interesting. Like I said, I had not heard of that one. I had seen the cover all over Instagram, but I didn't actually know what it was about. I've had really bad luck with thrillers so far this year, so I'm not convinced that I would be into reading that one. But you never know. It'll be interesting to see if that makes the shortlist, and actually if Black Leopard, Red Wolf makes the shortlist either. Given the response to Black Leopard, Red Wolf, I would be surprised if it makes the shortlist, and I'm not sure about this Helen Phillips one for the shortlist either. Next, we get to one that I have read and fully forget about constantly. I mean, I remember the book once somebody reminds me about it, but basically I have to be prompted. So it's Layla Lalami's book, The Other Americans. So if somebody says that to me, I'm like, oh yeah, I read that book. But if you say it again to me tomorrow, I'll be like, oh yeah, that book, I read it. I just forget about it. So in that one, it's set into motion when a Moroccan immigrant is killed under suspicious circumstances with witnesses and survivors desperate for answers. So basically, the way I described it when I first reviewed it is that the narrative unfolds like a fan. You kind of starts with just the family and kind of builds out, adding more and more narrators as you go on, who add shade and texture to the story. I thought that was really interesting for roughly the first half of the book. And I was enjoying the way it was working. I thought, it's funny because one thing I really credited the book with early on was that there seemed to be a natural twist that Layla Lalami could have gone for, and I credited the book for not going for that easy twist. And then, in the end, it went for that easy twist that I just didn't think worked and I didn't think was necessary. I also didn't like how it's very kind of slow moving in the beginning, but in a good way. It's because it's building a lot of detail and shade about these characters, but then it just starts speeding up in the last half and it skips time. And I didn't think that was in the book's service. I wasn't a huge fan of that. So I thought it was a good book, not a great book. I do think it has a good shot at getting into the shortlist though. When I'm not convinced, but I do think it will probably make the shortlist just on an easy guess. Now, here's another book that I have also seen all over Instagram and on BookTube as well. It's Julia Phillips's Disappearing Earth, in which the search for two sisters who have disappeared from a remote Russian city ignites powerful questions about class, gender, and ethnicity. This is one that I'm kind of interested in, but like kind of low-key interested, because there's so many things that I'm interested in right now that it's kind of fallen down a little low on the radar. If you have read this book and you think it's worth bumping up and maybe checking to see if like the library has it, let me know, because I am kind of interested in it. It's just that it's not high up on my priority list at the moment. And then they have The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead, which I read and really enjoyed a lot. I think this one, it's going to be shocking if this book is not on the short list. I think it has a good shot at winning as well, along with. I think there are two books that I would say are probably the front runners. Let me double check. Yes, there are two books that I would say are the front runners, and this is one of them. So if you don't know, first of all, where have you been? Second, it's the story of two teens in the Jim Crow South who struggle to preserve their idealism and their lives at the vicious Nickel Academy, which was based on the true story of a reform school where they discovered a graveyard out back in Florida. I did a video, because so many people in my corner of BookTube have already read and reviewed this book. I did not focus on a review. I did a video about things that you can read next. I'll link that down below. It's a great book. I definitely recommend that one. So then next is a debut. It is set in Denver. This is one of the ones I had not heard of. It's Kelly Fajardo-Anstine. I apologize if I said that wrong, but it's that author's Sabrina and Karina Stories. It focuses on Latinas of indigenous descent and explores themes of ancestry, incarceration, illness, gentrification, and domestic violence with compassion and precision. Well, that description is the first description I've ever gotten of that book, and I would be very interested. I'm going to definitely look further into that one. The cover is also very pretty and interesting. I mean, not that that means everything, but it certainly helps. So yeah, I am definitely going to check that, look a little further into that one. And the next one is also a debut, and also one that I had not heard of for now. So let's see if it fares as well as the other. It's Kimberly King Parsons' Black Light Stories. It illuminates the darker, grittier side of the Lone Star State with stories about drugs and motels, sexuality and self-harm, and a sense of yearning the size of Texas. Hoo-yah! That did just as well as the other one. Okay, so Sabrina and Karina and Black Light are definitely books that I'm going to be checking out. Those are subjects that I'm really interested in, and just sounds really good. I know there are a lot of people who are kind of iffy on the topic of short stories because you know, as with any collection, you know, you buy an album, you don't necessarily love every song on the album, but hopefully you like enough of them that it all, I was going to say it all sings, but that seems like a bit too much of a pun, so I'm not going to do it, except I kind of just did. So anyway, yeah, I like short stories, and it's been a while since I read one, actually. I don't think I've read a single short story collection in 2019, so I may very well have to fix that with one of these two books. Moving along, we get to one that I am currently reading, and I have the book, but I'm actually listening to it on audio, and on audio it is read by the author, Ocean Vuong, and which is funny because I'm only about a little less than an hour into it because I've had a really hard time getting reading in this week. Ocean Vuong, I've heard him speak in interviews as well, and I know this is just the way he talks. He always sounds nervous, which actually works in the book's favor, I think, at least so far. And I am enjoying this book, but since I am not even an hour into the audiobook, I feel like I can't give him too much of an opinion because it could go a lot of different ways. There's potential for it to go south. It's interesting because this book takes the format of a letter that a son is writing to his mother, but as in any book that is just intended to be one long letter, it's really just a letter in name only, because who's going to send a letter this long, you know? It just becomes a first-person narrative directed at another person really quickly, and or at least that's how it is in this part of the book. But I really like the idea, the premise behind this book. It is a debut novel about a Vietnamese immigrant family written in an epistolary style, with the son attempting to reveal the secrets of his life to his mother, who cannot read, and challenges the idea of identity and masculinity along the way. We've definitely gotten into the concept of masculinity so far in the book. And Ocean Vuong, yes, this is a debut novel, but Ocean Vuong, I believe, has released at least one volume of poetry. And because he is a poet, the writing is very poetic in style, although it is prose in form. Next is a book I've seen a lot on Instagram. I haven't seen anyone talk about on BookTube that I can remember. It's Fleischmann is in Trouble by Taffy Brodesser-Akner. Hope I said that right. It addresses male privilege and the wreckage of divorce when a father struggles to resume taking responsibility for his kids. Now I remember why I haven't really looked further into this one, because I really struggle with books that are about white dudes who can't get their lives together lately. You know, I'm a white dude who can't get my life together. I don't need to read about me anymore. It just feels like there's so many stories that are like that. So it's like, you know, a father struggling to take responsibility for his kids. Just take care of your kids. Done. End of story. So I don't know. If you've read Fleischmann is in Trouble, let me know if I'm just having a weird knee-jerk reaction to a book about a dude who's kind of just being a lazy dude. Then we have Susan Choi's Trust Exercise. I am familiar with Susan Choi. I think I read one of her other books, but the name is escaping me, and I don't remember anything about the plot. But though she is nominated on the long list for Trust Exercise, which is a deceptively straightforward novel about two students at a performing arts high school who fall in love, but leaves the reader questioning what happened to their relationship, as well as the relationship between fact and fiction. I hadn't heard that part about the relationship between fact and fiction. That, to me, sounds interesting. The idea of the relationship part is all I had heard before, and that did not grab my attention too much. So I may look a little more closely into this one now that I know that there's a element of like what is fact, what is fiction. But otherwise, it had kind of left me a little bit, I don't want to say cold. It just didn't grab my attention. But that is the 10 right there. So I already said I don't think Black Leopard, Red Wolf, or The Need have a really good shot at making the final 5, the shortlist. So I think the 2 front runners are going to be The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead or Unearthed But Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. I think I might give the edge, so far at least, to this guy right here, Unearthed But Briefly Gorgeous, because Colson Whitehead, the National Book Award, I think, really likes to celebrate lesser known authors in a lot of ways. And not that Ocean Vuong is not widely known. As I said, he did release a volume of poetry before this, but not as many people know about poetry, so it does still feel like this is a grand debut. And Colson Whitehead has already been around for several books, and he won a Pulitzer for Underground Railroad. I don't think he won a National Book Award for that. And I'm not going to look it up right now. So if you know, please drop something in the comments, and or maybe I'll look it up after this and drop it in the comments as well. But so I would say the Nickel Boys and Unearthed But Briefly Gorgeous definitely have a spot reserved in the final 5. I will be shocked if they both don't make it. And if they both don't make it, then whichever one does probably has an easy path to the win. But I'm going to give the edge to this one so far. We'll see what happens. As for the other 3 slots in the final, I think Trust Exercise, I think, has a good shot. And then after that, I think, well, it's kind of natural to go toward a lesser known author because, like I said, I don't think Marlon James has a good shot at getting in. Layla Lalami, maybe, but I'm gonna go a little crazy here, and I'm just gonna say that the remaining 2 spots are going to go to some of the debuts or some of the lesser known ones. I'm gonna jump to the ones that jumped out the most to me, which are Sabrina and Karina and Blacklight. I think that would be a really interesting shortlist right there. Fleischmann is in Trouble, like I said, I've seen a lot about it on Instagram, but I haven't actually seen a whole lot of people who have read it, which is interesting. And again, if I'm wrong, drop a comment and let me know. But yeah, so I'm gonna go with that. I'm gonna say the Nickel Boys, Unearthed But Briefly Gorgeous. Oh, I forgot about Disappearing Earth. Ooh. Okay, hang on. So, all right, the Nickel Boys, Unearthed But Briefly Gorgeous. I'm going to go with Sabrina and Karina, because that's the one that also is about Latinas, is it? Yes, Latinas. not that I think the National Book Award is going to make like a political statement and choose it just because of that, but I think it kind of gives it a little bit of an edge. So the Nickel Boys, Unearthed Briefly Gorgeous, Sabrina and Karina. I'm gonna go with Disappearing Earth over Trust Exercise, and then I'm just gonna go completely wild and say Blacklight instead of Trust Exercise. But if Trust Exercise makes it instead of Blacklight, I won't be surprised either. So that's my opinion on these so far. I'd love to hear your opinion. And again, if you've read any of these, especially the ones that I have not read, drop a comment down below. Let me know what you think of this long list and what you think might make the short list. And I thank you for your time watching this video. As always, it is very appreciated, and I will be back. Until then, happy reading.